Mary Jane Voller, died the 31st of December 1898. Henry, real name, Heinrich, Voller was a respectable German immigrant, who made a living as a porter and as a crane driver. In 1896, he married Mary Jane Holland, who was from Northamptonshire. They had 7 children in total, 3 of whom had died by 1906, 2 more by 1922. This is the story of one of the unfortunate ones. 1899 was not about to become a happy new year for the Voller family. 5-and-a-half-year-old Mary Jane Voller, known as Jenny, had been sent on an errand to buy a penny's worth of linseed from a corn chandler's in Tanner Street, 51 yards from her home at 77 Harpur Street, Barking, England. It was a short walk into Tanner Street from the end of Harpur Street, where the Vollers were lodging. However, it was 5:10 on that Saturday, and not only was it dark, it was also misty. The area today is considerably changed. In 1898, it had started to be redeveloped at the end of Tanner Street, where it met Ilford Lane. A short way up Ilford Lane was a bridge over the River Roding. At this time it was still pretty rural where Tanner Street met Ilford Lane. Although development was underway, there were still abandoned houses. Once around the corner of Tanner Street, you would have been entering a very dark country lane, with a river crossing. On the undeveloped south side of the bridge, a water-filled ditch ran from the river to some way past the Barking side of the Loxford Bridge. Today this is filled in. The bridge is incorporated into the main road that now runs into Fanshawe Avenue, which did not exist in 1898, but was under construction. There is also now a lake on the south side, but this didn't appear until the 1920s. It does sound a bit irresponsible to send such a young child out like that by today's standards. In 1898, no one would have questioned it, nor would they imagine something terrible could happen. Quite why Mary would have wandered so far from where the shop would have been, in gloomy darkness, is a mystery. She never made it to the chandler's shop, so either something or someone distracted her and led her into that area, or she was daydreaming and lost her way. Honestly, a 5-year-old is not that reliable, so even given the times, it was a bit negligent. Her poor father Henry, also known as Harry, was the one to discover her body 2 hours after she went missing. She was submerged in muddy water, curled up into the fetal position, not far from the bridge, in a stream that ran parallel to the river. Her mouth and nose were clogged with mud. Her hat was found in the water 200 yards from her body. 5 hours after she went missing, a police surgeon arrived at the Voller home, where she had been taken by her father, at her mother's insistence. Although accounts vary, she was fully clothed when found. A post-mortem was conducted at Barking Mortuary. It was concluded that she was unconscious when she entered the water, as there was little to no mud or water in her lungs or stomach. She had effectively asphyxiated, probably due to shock, which was deduced to be the cause of death. However, she displayed a number of peculiar injuries. She had 2 punctures to the throat, and additionally to the breast and abdomen. These were of considerable length, but shallow. Scratches ran parallel to the throat and abdominal injuries. Deeper wounds of about 1/2 3/4 of an inch were found on the pelvis and in a left thigh. She also showed evidence of brain trauma, but not a head injury. This could have been what rendered her unconscious, in addition to the shock of plunging into the freezing water. The examining doctor was of the opinion that she was not sexually assaulted, although there was a report that some of her underwear was torn. Given the clothing at the time, this probably shouldn't be considered significant. That said, modern forensics might find differently. However, because her body was immersed in muddy water, this could be difficult, even today. There is some confusion with regard to the possible cause of the injuries. At the inquest, the doctor was of the opinion that they were made using a penknife or scissors. Previously he had stated that a blunt object was responsible. It may be these descriptions relate to different injuries. The nature of little Mary's death is mysterious. The inquest verdict was murder by person or persons unknown. This seems most likely, although an accidental death is conceivable. The jury had a number of astute theories. There was wooden fencing close to where she was found, the nature of which would have been more jagged than sharp, but could have had some sharp points. Also, wire fencing in the vicinity. Apparently, discarded timber was known to get dumped by the riverside and often had nails sticking out. These could potentially have been responsible for at least some of her injuries. She likely fell, or more probably, was thrown off the bridge. This could have caused her head to fly back, inducing the brain damage. The motive was unlikely to have been robbery, as she only had a threepence coin, although the money wasn't found on her person. It does seem unlikely that an adult would murder a child for a few pennies. However, a teenager might. Accidental death is possible, albeit not all that plausible. There does not seem to be an obvious rationale for her murder. What we can suppose is that whatever happened on Ilford Lane, happened quickly, with no time to scream or resist. At the time of day she disappeared, that end of Ilford Lane would have been fairly busy, with people passing back and forth over the bridge. However, there was a 2-hour window in which someone could have abducted her, and then carried her to the bridge. There was one suspect, a 17-year-old male who was known for behaving oddly, and known to sleep rough in the general area. He was questioned by the local police, but was released as there was no evidence to charge him. So, what can we make of this? I think she was maliciously killed by some individual. Her injuries were likely caused during her fall from the bridge. Unfortunately, we don't know whether the police fully investigated the area where her body was found, so it is possible, albeit entirely speculative. Otherwise, it is a bizarre collection of injuries, which do not really make much sense. It does seem probable that she died in the water, though not impossible that she was suffocated elsewhere. There was plenty of time. While the route from her house to the shop was relatively short, there certainly would have been opportunity for someone to snatch her. As is so often the case, the killer likely lived close by. The motive for her death is just as mysterious as the nature of her death. Whatever the reason, it is just another sad chapter in the annals of crime. Henry Voller died in 1919, age 52, Mary Jane lived to the ripe old age of 84. Their 2 surviving children also made it into their 80s. In 2016, the Daily Mail ran a story claiming that Mary Voller may have been the 7th victim of a possible serial killer who was never caught. A builder named Joseph Roberts has been conjectured to have been this man, and it was further hypothesized that he was emulating Jack the Ripper. Old Jack has a lot to answer for.